And now for the last chunk of this lecture series, the last part of the Lecture 10 set, the wrapping up Chapter 16. We've already told you a little bit about what sugars look like individually, structurally, and their basic chemical characteristics. We began linking those sugars together to create larger polysaccharides. Talked a little bit about the chemistry that monosaccharides can engage in, primarily redox reactions and phosphorylations. And we talked about storing glucose, either for energy or for structural reasons. What we'll talk about primarily here are glycoproteins. We've introduced them in the first chunk very briefly. These are proteins that have sugars linked to them, and we'll talk about what they do functionally. That'll bring us to the story of lectins. So let's first define glycoproteins. Whenever you have a carbohydrate and that carbohydrate, that sugar, is covalently linked to a protein, you have just created a glycoprotein. So glycoproteins are characterized by being primarily proteins with some sugars added to them. So they are mostly protein, mostly amino acids with a few sugars on them. The creation of a glycoprotein begins in the endoplasmic reticulum, and it is expanded and finished in the Golgi apparatus. Many glycoproteins are found at the cell surface, embedded in the cell membrane, and they function in the signaling that we talked about in the first chunk as well. Cells can recognize one another and transmit information to each other largely through these glycoproteins. Cell adhesion is also mediated in this way. Cells stick to one another to create larger tissues due to interactions between glycoproteins in the cell membrane. In addition, many secreted proteins that are released by the cell are also glycosylated. So characteristic of glycosylated proteins is that they tend to be outward facing or outward headed. And this essentially is the type of sugar or set of sugars that is added to a protein. This is commonly referred to as a sugar tree because it resembles a tree in its branching pattern. And so a starter tree, in fact that's what we see here is the starter tree. A starter tree is added to a protein in the ER. And then as that protein moves to the Golgi, that tree is expanded. So some subunits are removed, other subunits are put on in its place. The tree gets bigger or it gets modified or reformed. And so now what we have at the end of this process is a protein, a fully folded protein, and that's what's represented here in blue. But studded along the exterior of that protein are these different sugar trees, these different complex carbohydrates. So this is a glycoprotein, largely protein, mostly protein, a protein in essence, but a protein studded with sugars on its exterior. And to come back to the example I ended the last chunk with, this is indeed what the red blood cell proteins look like that give rise to the different blood types. There are proteins embedded in the membrane of red blood cells, and for somebody with AB blood, some of those red blood cell proteins have A sugars linked to them, and some have B sugars linked to them. For someone like me with O blood, I don't have the glycosyltransferases needed to make those linkages, and so my red cell blood proteins don't have any sugars linked to them at all. So different blood types and many other glycosylations are due to glycosyltransferases that add sugars to proteins that are found in many different places in the cell. Now, I already told you that glycoproteins are almost entirely protein with some sugars added to them, but the opposite can also occur as well. We can have structures that are largely sugar, with just some protein components scattered throughout, and those are called Proteoglycans. So the second term in these phrases, in this terminology, the second term always tells you what you have more of. Glycoprotein, the second term is protein, those are largely protein. Proteoglycan, the second term is glycan, referring to sugars, these are primarily sugar. So what do these glycoproteins do? Well, they allow cells to stick to each other, they allow cells to transmit information, but how? They do so because of their diversity. You can have so many different glycoproteins because of all the different sugar monomers that you can add together and all the different linkages by which they can be linked together. So huge diversity of glycoproteins because of all the different types of sugars we have and the way that they can be linked. Also branching, different types of branching, the extent of the branching, where the branching occurs, also lends to the diversity of these glycoproteins. So we have many different oligosaccharides that we could make from, for example, 4 different monomers, than oligopeptides we can make from 4 different amino acids because the linkages matter. So the question becomes why? Why can you create such diverse glycoproteins? Certainly in life, we never see complexity just for complexity's sake. Nothing is ever that complex in a cell for no reason. What do these glycoproteins do? And specifically what they do is they interact with lectins. Lectins are another class of proteins. Now, lectins are not glycoproteins. Lectins are proteins that can interact with, bind to, and specifically recognize glycoproteins through the sugars that they carry. So lectins are expressed on one cell surface, while glycoproteins are expressed on another cell's surface, and the lectin-glycoprotein interaction now allows those two cells to interact. That interaction is very, very tight and very specific. Lectins are found all throughout life. Animals have lectins, microorganisms have lectins, plants have lectins, and lectins are always for the recognition and binding to glycoproteins. Glycoproteins talk to other cells and send their messages due to the lectins they can interact with. In animals, lectins are primarily dedicated to cell-cell adhesion, cells connecting to one another. Lectins and the carbohydrates on the glycoproteins that they are interacting with interact together through many, many non-covalent weak interactions. These weak interactions in spatial, three-dimensional space gives the specificity and the strength for the binding. We talked about Velcro as an analogy for many, many weak interactions coming together to give strength. We talked about it in the context of van der Waals as well as H-bonds, and the same is true here. The lectins and the carbohydrates they bind to interact very weakly, but many, many of those weak interactions give a great deal of strength in the binding. Just like there are different classes of other proteins and different classes of sugars, there are different classes of lectin proteins as well, and these different classes allow different cellular processes to occur. Let's zero in on the selectins. Selectins are just one subset or one class of lectins, still proteins that interact with other glycoproteins. Selectins are found in immune system cells, and they allow immune system cells to anchor at the site of injury for inflammatory responses. So you can imagine if there is cellular damage, if there's a breach in the integrity of the organism, say a wound or a bruise or a cut, and we need an immune response in that area, those cells around that wound, around that trauma, instantly begin expressing glycoproteins. Immune system cells, such as white blood cells, are constantly circulating in the bloodstream. They always express selectins on their surface. So now as those white blood cells go around that point of trauma, those selectins that the white blood cells are expressing will bind to and adhere to the glycoproteins that those cells at the wound site are now expressing on their surface, and that will allow the immune system cells to anchor at that point of injury. There are different subtypes of these types of selectins. Some allow adhesion to lymph node cells, to endothelial cells. Blood platelets actually have this type of interaction as well. Other selectins are expressed by the embryo right after fertilization. And in fact, the initial implantation of an embryo to the uterine wall, just as that zygote or that new embryo is floating by the uterine wall, is through a selectin glycoprotein interaction. The very first anchoring that any of us did as we began our road down development as an embryo was through a selectin glycoprotein interaction. The cells of the uterine wall express a specific oligosaccharide as part of a glycoprotein, and the embryonic cells express a selectin that matches that glycoprotein perfectly. The embryo expressing that selectin floats around the uterine cells. We have a selectin glycoprotein interaction that anchors the embryo to the uterine wall and also signals the cell that anchoring has occurred so that a deeper implantation can occur by the embryo. This is where a placenta starts to form so that true development becomes possible. As all of you probably know, we are harboring trillions of bacterial cells in our gut. Our gut is lined with E. coli cells that keep our gut healthy. The E. coli that is in our gut is actually adhering to the wall of our digestive system through lectin glycoprotein interactions. Our digestive cells express and display glycoproteins on their cell surface, and E. coli has evolved lectins that perfectly match those glycoproteins, keeping the E. coli anchored to our digestive system. And it's not always all good. Sometimes these interactions are co-opted for bad. Viruses, many viruses, influenza in particular, actually gain entrance into host cells, gain entrance into our cells by fooling this system. We do always express glycoproteins on our cell surface, and some viruses, again, influenza is an example, express a selectin mimic on their viral protein coat. In the case of the flu, that protein is called hemagglutinin. And that hemagglutinin on the flu virus binds to glycoproteins, very much like a selectin would, and that anchors the virus at the cell surface. In fact, this interaction is so strong and so permanent that even once the virus gets entry into the host cell, the only way it can let go and further float inside is to itself cleave that hemagglutinin protein to release the interaction with the glycoprotein. Pretty amazing stuff. So to summarize this last chunk, we're talking about glycoproteins now as functional versions of sugars. Glycoproteins are proteins that express a sugar tree and display them. And we talked about the lectins that bind to those glycoproteins and all of the cellular processes that mediates, from adhering white blood cells to a point of trauma, to the implantation of an embryo after fertilization, also to the E. coli lining our gut, and co-opting that system and fooling it through mimic proteins expressed by flu viruses so that they can gain entry into our cell. So that wraps up our carbohydrate lecture. We'll be moving on to glycolysis next, which is the first of many, many lectures on the metabolism of glucose. We are poised now to talk about how we extract energy from glucose through the process of metabolism. As always, thanks for watching.